Hey everybody, my name is Cindy Matalucci and you're watching The Pulse. I'm so excited about my guest today. I have Cristina Cash, a bilingual American singer-songwriter, first-generation Cuban-American, Grand Ole Opry performer, known for fusing country, pop, and Latin music, and married to music producer John Carter Cash, the son of Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash. Welcome.
Hi, Cindy. Great to see you.
I'm so excited to have you. We're honored to have you. And I have so many questions for you.
I can't wait. We're going to have some fun.
I love it. Well, thank you for being here. So I want to start with something recent. So July 17th, you released your interpretations of Diane Warren's classic ballad, How Do I Live, in English and Spanish. Such an emotional song. I wanted to talk about this with you.
Yeah, so I first heard the song when I was 11 years old, both the Trisha Yearwood and LeAnn Rimes versions, and I was just like, wow, I fell in love with country music. I was already listening to country music radio, and you know, at that time period, there's so many female country artists that were just such a force. There was like Shania, Faith Hill, Martina, and of course like LeAnn and Trisha. And that song was just so beautiful and it really showcased the vocals so well. I just remember it being like the quintessential country song that got me into the genre.
Wow.
Because it was so successful, that song, really. And that was like my hairbrush song that I sang in the mirror with. And I recorded a version of it as a demo, maybe when I was about 13, thereabouts, that I need to find. I've got it somewhere in my house.
Oh, I love that.
But it was unreleased, so I've actually already recorded it as a preteen. And Diane Warren is such an iconic songwriter.
Oh my God, she's so iconic.
Yes, and she signed off on these two versions and gave her stamp of approval, which is amazing.
Well, and this song, when you were 11, right? This is what really you wanted to pursue country music after hearing this.
Yes. I did. And, I felt like now with it being the 30th anniversary of the song next year, upcoming 2027, I thought, why not do an English version and a Spanish version? And there were Spanish versions recorded in the past, like one by Jenny Rivera and by Milly Correger.
Okay.
In fact, my friend, producer Rudy Perez, who's Cuban-American, like myself, he was actually born in Cuba, so he's Cuban. I worked with him for years in Miami, then he moved to Nashville as well, and he wrote the Spanish lyrics in the 90s, so I just used his Spanish lyrics.
Wow.
And so it's the first time, although it's been recorded in those languages, that it's been recorded by the same person in English and Spanish. So it's just really cool, just with the anniversary of that song coming up and getting to sing it on the Opry. The last time I was on the Opry was incredible. It felt like a full circle moment to me, especially
so beautiful.
Since it was one of those songs that got me into singing country music when I was a little girl. So to sing it on that stage was like a full circle moment. In the circle, full circle moment.
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yes.
So you also released your 2026 album, The Sunshine State, and that's bilingual country record. And this was the first time that you kind of blended your country and your Latin roots together.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk to you about that. How was that for you?
It's interesting because growing up in Miami, Florida, and speaking English and Spanish at home, that was just my life anyway. So if I wanted to speak with my grandparents, they didn't speak a lick of English because they were immigrants from Cuba.
Okay.
So if I wanted to speak with abuela and abuelo, grandma and grandpa, I had to speak Spanish. Or with my sisters who grew up like me in the United States and were born in the United States, they spoke English, like they were listening to Michael Jackson and like having Pepsi with their friends and just like normal teenagers and like dancing to Thriller and like Madonna and all this stuff. So it was like English all the time. Then my parents spoke like a mix. So I felt like I needed to adapt to like every single person like early on in my childhood.
That's kind of cool though that you have that.
Yeah, so I feel like it made my music very flexible, and where I was given my first opportunities was actually in the Spanish language market. I performed as a child on a show called Sábado, Gigante, which was the longest running variety show, I think, in the Guinness Book of World Records. And it was a Latin variety show, and I was one of the kids that used to perform like little segments and competitions, but it was all in Spanish, catered toward the Spanish market.
Okay.
And then I had the opportunity to sign my first record deal with Sony Music Latin because their headquarters were in Miami, and that's where I lived. So even though my Spanish was already there, I had to be better with my Spanish. So I had to like read in Spanish, give interviews in Spanish, because I had to make sure that my Spanish was flawless. So I think a lot of that early work helped me out for when I started writing music.
Okay.
And doing these adaptations and translations. So like on the Sunshine State record, with songs like Daybreak, songs like Last Call, like all these songs, you never want to translate something literally because it can sound very cheesy very quickly. And I often tell people that writing a song from scratch is easier than doing a translation.
Right. Well, and I love Florida Girl. And there's so
Yes.
many good songs. And the Margarita song.
Oh, Cheap Margaritas,
Oh
yes.
my God. And the video with you in the bed and everything.
Yes,
it's
yes.
amazing.
I love Cheap Margaritas. That one was actually written by Frank Ray, Erica Ender, Willie Breeding, and Jessica Kane, all really close friends of mine.
Wow.
And the Spanish adaptation for that was done by Erica Ender, my friend.
Okay.
And that one got a lot of traction online. It was fun.
It's a fun song.
I didn't realize how many people love margaritas. It's like a very fun subject for people. So when I released that, I feel like that was really fun to see online because people would send me like their happy hour videos and post them to the song.
Oh, that's so cute.
And I'm like, this is cute. This is cute.
I love that. Well,
I enjoyed that.
I think that was such an amazing album. And I wanted to ask you, because you said,
Yes.
you know, you signed to Sony Music Latin at the age of 15. That is so young.
Yeah.
How did you handle that at such a young age?
It's interesting. I don't get asked that often. That's a really good question.
Okay.
Because I was still in school at the same time. So I was dealing with a lot of things that a regular teenager would deal with, like trying to figure out my friend group in school. Because this is my freshman year, pretty much, that I got signed to my record label. Like,
And
I
you're
was in a new
15.
school. I was 15 years old. I'm like, I'm confused because like I'm a student and I have a job like with a corporation. You know what I mean? So I had
Right.
to do a lot of rehearsals.
You had to grow up
I had to grow up
fast.
fast. Like record after school. I would get calls from my A&R executive right after school, you know, like on a payphone. Like I remember, I'm dating myself now. That's horrible.
Right. Hey, there's a phone
or
in this
just-
room back there.
Yeah, because we weren't allowed to have, you know, cell phones in school. Like cell phones were like becoming a thing that people were having back then. But yes, I dated myself. Anyways, so yes, I had to be responsible. I had to be accountable to not only my schoolwork and to my peers and things like that and all the activities I had, but also at my job. So I was actually homeschooled my last 2 years of high school
Wow.
via the University of Lincoln, Nebraska, because of my workload.
Oh my gosh. Well, you turned out amazing.
Thank
so,
you.
I mean, obviously you did something right.
Thank you. Well, like later I went to college. I went to Florida International University. I studied journalism.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes.
So broadcast journalism, did you always know you wanted to do music though?
I always knew I wanted to do music, but I was very interested in journalism because I wanted to learn a different style of writing.
Okay.
And I wanted to do the on-camera work and everything, but I learned very quickly that it's a very different format because most of the stuff we worked with was news, and that's very serious.
Oh, so serious.
And I'm not very serious. Like in many ways I am, but it's it's delivering a story. But what it helped me with, it helped turn me into a very well-rounded person, and I thank my education for that, because one of the things one of my professors told me was to look at the news every single day, and I still have that habit because you want to be informed about what's happening in the world.
Yes.
And being informed in what's happening in the world has helped with my songwriting.
Okay. I love that.
And then later, when I did my master's degree, I studied at Harvard. Like a lot of that was poetry writing and fiction writing. And I have songs that are inspired by classes I did. So I tell people that being an avid reader is very important.
Because your imagination and when you're writing songs and it
Yes.
probably all goes together.
Yes. So as a songwriter, I feel like all the information you can gather around you, whether it's observing your friends and family and their relationships, your relationships, having your heart broken, having something sad happen in your life, or just like reading a book that has a very good plot, essentially, could inspire a song.
I love that. Go to school. It's important.
Go to school. Stay in school, kids.
Stay in school. Okay, so I want to ask you, you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but who were some of your greatest musical influences when you were growing up?
Well, definitely in Miami, Gloria Estefan, which I'm friends with her and Emilio Estefan. I worked with Emilio a lot, actually, at Crescent Moon Studios in Miami. And what was so cool about that was, it was like the biggest star you can get, like as a little kid. So I saw her performing at the Miami Arena for Hurricane Andrew benefit. Hurricane Andrew had just hit us.
Wow.
I was in Miami. It was a Category 5 hurricane. My family and I hid under a mattress. We had damage, like absolutely horrible hurricane, one of the most expensive natural disasters ever. And I remember this woman commanding an entire arena. I'd never been to a concert in my life. I think I was about 7 years old.
Okay.
It was my first concert. So like Gloria was a huge influence, but then Selena Quintanilla was also a huge influence because I saw myself in her. Although I'm Cuban-American, she's Mexican-American from Texas, I'm from Florida. I saw a girl that was singing in 2 languages at once, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I sing, I speak English and Spanish at home, maybe this is something I can do. So that's why a lot of my stuff has that duality with the English and Spanish, as well as Gloria. Gloria has had a bilingual career as well. These are two women with bilingual careers. But then on the country music front, of course, there was LeAnn and Trisha with How Do I Live, you know, which is why I decided to honor that song. There was Shania, Faith Hill, Martina McBride, you know, Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn. And I actually visited Nashville for the first time in 2006.
Wow.
And what's really strange was I was supposed to work with a producer out of Hendersonville, you know, like where the cabin is, where our studio is and everything. And, you know, that didn't pan out. But I also took a backstage tour of the Grand Ole Opry, and I volunteered to sing in my tour group in the Circle as a tourist. And I sang a Loretta Lynn song. And then like years later, I would work with Loretta Lynn, with like my husband, John Carter Cash, in the studio. I would help kind of like guide her vocals in the studio and some of the projects. So it's weird how that happens sometimes. Like you don't know what's gonna happen in your life, and you wonder if like your desire in your mind, like your quiet desire, caused that or not.
Like you manifested it?
Like you manifested it, yes. Because I was living in Miami at the time that I came to visit. And I didn't know that I would ever live here. I didn't know that all those things would happen, so.
Well, we just did that tour, and I tried to sing a little bit in the center too, but I was so emotional just being in the Opry, and I know you get to perform there quite a bit. It's just, there's just so much history there.
Yes, it's very special.
Oh, it's such a special place.
Yes.
Well, I was going to ask you about your husband.
Yes.
So the Sunshine State came to life at the Cash Cabin, which you were just talking about, which was the home studio built by Johnny Cash in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And you joined forces with your husband and then co-producer Willie Breeding.
Yes.
So I love that you work with your husband so much and you guys collaborate. I work with my husband. And
there you go.
I know, Lord knows it's not that easy all the time.
It's not that easy, you know.
But how do you guys do it? You seem to do it so well.
Well, in the studio, he's someone I respect. I think there's a mutual respect between us, which I think is why it works. Like not only personally, but probably professionally, most definitely. And, you know, like anyone, like you have creative differences sometimes. Like if I hear a mix back that he thinks is perfect, I'm like, I think there needs to be a vocal up on this mix. He's like, well, I disagree, Anna. And like, we'll have a disagreement there.
Right.
But it's not very often. Like usually he has very great instincts. Like I feel like I'm a good listener, but if I do feel adamant about a certain idea that I have, I am a strong girl and I make my voice known.
You put your foot down.
I put my foot down. But yes, it's really cool that we have that to share together for sure, and that we can create and be proud of the things that we do together. So
I love that. I know it's not easy, but you guys do it so well. Yeah. And maybe you can give some advice to the viewers, maybe to the women out there. So how do you balance everything? Because you have work, you have husbands, you have kids. How do you do it all?
I think the most important thing is, you know, making sure you're not going crazy. Like I like to calendar things out on an iCal. I also invite everyone, you know, just like I need to know like the studio schedule, my husband's schedule. I need to know like when we're away, when we're here or not. My priority is my family above everything. Like I love being a singer, I love my job, but I feel like the well-being of my family is the most important thing above all. So I cook a lot when I'm home. Not all the time, but when I'm home, I do like to cook. I like to make homemade meals. I like to have a well-balanced diet for my kids. I make sure that, you know, if I'm not taking them to an activity that somebody is, that they're well taken care of. And I feel like you also have to pursue your passions in life.
Right, like you need to have something for you.
You need to have a balance, and I feel like that's a very good example for children as well, to see a parent that is happy and thriving and having a purpose in what they love to do.
I love that. And I've seen some of your videos of you making food.
Yes. I'm going to do a lot more, actually. That's another plan.
Should.
So I plan on ramping up the kitchen videos again really soon, like when I get back from, you know, my trip that I'm taking.
I'm excited for those because I always love I love the cooking videos.
Yes.
So I want to talk to you. First of all, you've had such an amazing career already.
Thank you.
You've worked with so many amazing artists. We were talking about it today. Loretta Lynn, Emilio Estefan Jr. we talked about.
Yes.
Chris Perez.
Yes, it was Selena's husband, actually. Yeah. Yes. So that was another full circle thing to be able to work with him as well. So we met through a mutual friend in Nashville, and he came to the cabin to do sessions with John and I for just projects we were working with. And I had the inspiration to write an English verse to the classic Mexican song La Llorona.
Yes.
Which is public domain. It's over 100 years old. And I started looking and there had not been an English version or any English lyrics written to it. So there was like an English verse and chorus I did. So I asked Chris if he could be a part of it and play guitar on it. We shot a video in San Antonio, Texas, where he's from, his hometown.
It's a beautiful video.
Thank you. And now it's first round for Latin Grammys, you know. So it's not an official nomination, but it's in the round. It has the potential to be one. So
that's amazing.
Thank you.
Well, and I want to talk about this song, right? It translates to the Weeping Woman,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And this has got a lot of history. It's Mexican folktale song.
It's a gothic tale,
right?
That is a little creepy. So if you like creepy, it's sort of like a horror film. It's like, I would say La Llorona is like our version of Bloody Mary, like a very kind of scary lady. So what happened is the woman in the story, she loses the love of her life. He doesn't die, but he just leaves her for another woman. So she is so devastated and depressed that she's basically crying so much that she creates a river that drowns her children.
Oh my God.
It's horrible.
Wow. Yes. But I think it's been, there's a lot of different versions, and I think it was featured in the 2017 Disney Pixar film, Coco, too.
It was, yes, right? It was featured in Coco because my kids watch that all the time. And they're like, hey, Mom, I recognize that song. Like when I record that, that's in Coco. I'm like, yes, you're right. Well, it's like over 100 years old, but yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations on the consideration for the Grammy. We're going to be rooting for you.
Thank you.
And then, okay, so speaking of artists that you've worked with, is there somebody that you are just dying to work with? Like somebody on your bucket list? Is there someone that you're like itching to work with?
You know, like in the country space, there are so many. Like as far as like females, I love what Ella Langley is doing right now.
I love her.
I'm a big Miranda Lambert fan. You know, so many talented guys in the country sphere too, but sometimes I like to veer from my genre and do something else completely different. Like I would love to write on like a dance record or something.
Oh wow.
Or like write for like Charlie XCX or something.
Oh my
you know, like
gosh.
something very left field as a writer because I'm published by BMG as well. I can write all kinds of genres. So even though I'm releasing country and everything and Latin, I can also write pop, dance, rock, everything. So I feel like to kind of veer a little bit in a different creative direction could be cool with like a dance artist or something.
I love that. Okay. I want to see what you do with this.
Yes.
So, okay, one other thing I wanted to talk about. This is really exciting. So you announced that On My Radio, which is a song that you co-wrote with Jamey Johnson, a tribute to the late Bill Cody. This is going to be available on YouTube now, and it's going to be streaming soon?
Yeah, so it was released on YouTube streaming as well as social media, and it will be released to the DSPs and to streaming this next month.
And it's got to be so emotional because you got to perform this at the Opry for the funeral.
Yeah, so Jamey and I performed at the funeral at the Opry as well as the Opry that Saturday before, and the way that Jamey and I wrote that song was very organic. We had planned to write together for a few months, and the date kept getting moved or I had a conflict or he had a conflict. So I really believe that we wrote on the correct day, that, you know, when all the stars aligned, then we finally got to the cabin and started writing. And we were in the kitchen table at the cabin and, you know, we were just talking about our mutual friend, Bill Cody, you know, who was struggling at the time. He was in the hospital and that was all that was on our mind. And I said, Jamey, we can't write about anything else but Bill, you know? So we wrote a song for Bill. And he, being friends with his son, was able to take it to the family, have them play it for Bill.
Oh, wow.
In the hospital.
That's amazing.
Yes, and they really believed to some degree that he heard it. You know, he couldn't really respond or anything, but they played it for him before he passed.
Wow. It must have been so emotional, too, to be actually on the stage performing that.
Yes, it was incredibly emotional, but I feel like it's a song that needed to be created. You know, it came from a very honest place, and it was for our friend, and it was an honor to be asked by the family to do that.
I love that so much. Well, okay, I know you don't have all the time in the world today, but I do want to ask you a few more quick questions.
Yes.
So I recently saw that you were in Fort Worth, Texas. We were talking about this.
I love it there.
That you're going to be performing at Billy Bob's, Texas. This is so exciting.
Yes.
We have to talk about this.
So it's the largest honky tonk in the world. I'd never been. So I had the chance with Louis the Singer. John and I are performing with Louis the Singer, and actually Perez is going to play too, and our friend Bob Gomez and our friend Aldo. this large show at Billy Bob's, which is my first time ever performing there. John Carter too. I think John Carter had been there with his dad, Johnny Cash. I think he might have been on stage performing with his dad, like guitar or something. But I will be singing several of my original songs, and John and I will be singing together. And it's just so cool. We shot some content out there, so that's why I was on the Longhorn Cattle.
I was asking her, I'm like, I saw you on Instagram on the Longhorn Cattle.
Yes, yeah, and I know Louis going to do some promo videos. So, you know, his crew shot us like reality show style all day. So we went around,
amazing.
We had Mexican food, we tried on boots, like Western wear. I was on Longhorn Cattle. Little did I know I'd be riding horses that day too. Like, so the day kept stretching into something super fun where I got to really appreciate Texas and the Western culture. Fort Worth is super cool. I love that area.
I know, I've never been, and I heard that this place, like they say, like to make it in country music, you have to step across this stage. I guess apparently there's so much history there.
Yes. Yeah,
And
Billy Bob's was huge.
Right, it's like 100,000 square feet. I think that there's like 6,000 people that can fit in there. And
Yeah, so we had I had the rare opportunity, John Carter and I did with Louis, to see that place empty. And Louis has played there several times. He is like hometown hero. He's from Fort Worth. This is his hometown show. He's also a Latin country singer. You know, his stylings are more R&B, but you know, so it's kind of like a different take on it. But he's Mexican-American from Fort Worth. And yeah, we just get along really well with him, John and I do. So we're so excited to play the show on September 10th.
September 10th. Can you get your tickets now?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the tickets are for sale now. And then the very next day, I fly to Nashville early in the morning at the crack of dawn because I'm performing at the Opry with John on September the 11th.
Oh, wow.
For the Little House on the Prairie special.
Oh my gosh. Well, you are a busy girl. I'm glad that we got you today.
Thank you. Well, I'm so excited. I just feel really grateful to be doing what I love. I don't take it for granted. I feel very blessed, and I love every chance I get to perform and to speak with people and to speak with friends. And you know, it's great to be here with you today.
Well, we're so honored to have you, and you guys will have all the links up to where you can find everything on Anna Cristina, and congratulations on all your success.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time when we put our finger on the pulse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.